Hey everyone, Zach Mason here. Welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, on this channel we speak a lot about biblical prophecy, current events, how they line up, and we don't ignore what the Holy Spirit is doing today, how God is communicating to us today through dreams and visions and even prophetic words. So if you're not familiar with me at all, I recommend before you watch this video, you go watch one or two other videos I've done on this channel one is called The 4 Phases of Judgment Coming to America. The other is called The Science of Prophecy. And in there you will see, I will lay out my credentials, what I've studied, why I say I know what I know, and talk a little bit about the things I've already predicted that have come true. And in The Science of Prophecy, I lay out the biblical criteria for evaluating dreams and visions and modern day prophets, and how we can know if they're from God or not. Anyways, for the rest of you who know the channel, I wanted to remind you that there are several false flag events coming. I haven't talked a lot about this, but I'll remind you with this section from one of Dana Coverstone's dreams.
Then I was seeing a bunker that I felt in the dream was below the White House with no windows and a very large conference table in the middle. The symbol of the White House was on a large sign on the wall, and seated at that table were 16 men, some of whom were dressed in military uniforms. Some were wearing dark suits, but all of them were wearing sunglasses that were tinted absolute black, and you could not see the eyes of anyone. Several of the military men were wearing their medals and ranks, and they were looking at very thick folders in front of them. The folders had top secret classification stamped on them and heralded this title, The American Solution. One of the men stood and acknowledged each man while saluting each one individually. He then spoke very clearly and said this: "Today we leap off of the mountain and fly towards a new beginning. Many, though, not us, will hit the precipice moments later, but we will not even have to look back or look down, as we have better places to go." At that moment, all of the men nodded, and they hit the table very hard with their fists, and it rumbled in the room. "Gentlemen, please give a report," he said, and a man in a suit and glasses stood up, and he said this: "3 events are planned, but if the first one hits hard enough, the other 2 will not be needed. Our target groups will be easily identified in the events, and the rest of America will demand their arrest and imprisonments immediately, perhaps even their executions." The first speaker stood again. He looked at one of the men wearing the darkest sunglasses and asked what he had to offer. That gentleman stood and he said this: "Hoover will be proud, sir, and our list is pristine and better than his ever was." He then sat down, and the first speaker said, "All in favor?" And every man hit their fist on the table, pounding them as hard as they could, and they shouted the word "favor" as they did so.
All right, so most of us are aware that Dana Coverstone's dreams are from God. We've all understood that. And so what we see here is God revealing one of the meetings, the secret meetings, where the elites are planning up to 3 false flag events against the American people. And why would they do this? To advance their agenda or to cover something up. So we know that these are used in order to affect gun control. One reason they've done these things. These are still coming in the future. They haven't happened yet, is what I believe. And there's other motivations we'll talk about in a second. One of these false flag attacks is most likely going to happen at the Toyota Center in Houston, where the Houston Rockets play. Watch this clip from another dream here.
Okay, guys, I had a dream this morning that I feel I need to share with you guys. Okay, it starts out with a terrorist attack. I'm walking up to the Toyota Center where the Rockets play, the Houston Rockets, and there is caution tape sectioning off the streets. And I look and I see bodies laying all the way, like a trail of them going all the way back to the Toyota Center. Some were burnt, and some were shot. Then I remember after that, I heard the policeman talking about what happened. And he said that the gunman was shot. And so that's kind of what I went with. Okay, that they shot and killed the gunman. So then I see the President Trump, walking in the street, and there is a big parade, and he is all of a sudden shot in the side. And I was thinking, wow, they just shot the president. And so I ended up I went back and had a conversation with some people that I know, and we were talking about it, and our stories were conflicting concerning the terrorist attack. They believed something totally different from what I believed, and what I believe this to mean is that the government was pretty much lying about what actually happened.
I've known about that dream for a while, and I've been waiting on that event for a while. And what exactly is it that happens, and what is the story being told after is not sure, okay? I do know, now, if we think about the other false flags Dana Coverstone was talking about, those were, in his vision or in his dream, he was seeing certain elites, intelligence agencies, plotting intentional false flag events, which is when a government makes something tragic happen and then blames it on someone else in order to achieve an emotional response from the people to move their policies forward, whether it's the opening of a war, whether it's oppressing some group, whatever it is. That's why false flags are done. This isn't unique to our government or this time in history. This has been done throughout history. The very first false flag event that I'm aware of was, there's probably more if I would think about them, but Nero in the Roman Empire wanted to expand his palace, if I remember right, and so he had his soldiers set a poor neighborhood on fire that was next to his palace that was preventing him from expanding. He had them set it on fire, and the fire got out of control and burned all of Rome. The whole city of Rome, almost the whole city of Rome burned down. The famous saying, Nero fiddled while Rome burned. He was supposedly up on his roof doing that. He's an evil guy. But when it got out of control and most of Rome burned, then he knew he was in trouble because the nobility, all the Roman citizens, they were upset. There were rumors flying that he had done it. Well, he blamed the Christians. He said, no, the Christians did it. The Christians are the ones who did this. And that's why the persecution then broke out against the Christians from that anger. And that's why Peter and Paul were both killed. They were both killed in that persecution from that false flag event. So who do you think is going to be blamed for these false flag events that are coming? You and I, believers in Christ who will have nothing to do with it, we're going to be blamed for it. And what kind of persecution do you think is going to be coming out of it? Well, very strong persecution. Not necessarily from these initial false flag events. That will start to move the needle where people are really starting to dislike Christians. The final one will come when the lockdowns and all that stuff happens, and all of that's going to be blamed on us. That entire disease is going to be blamed on Christians for not taking injectable cures, for misinformation online. That's when people will really begin to hate Christians, when the media starts saying that narrative. But I see two kinds of false flag events coming, and really an honest, true false flag is when a government does something and blames it on another people or a group. They lie about it, and this was intended from the start. There's a different kind, though, that isn't really a false flag as much as just a false narrative in order to protect one group at the expense of another, but the government wasn't necessarily behind it. So I see both happening in the future. Okay. I see the government intentionally doing some kind of mass shootings or allowing some mass shootings and then blaming it on Christian nationalists is what they're going to say. This is their new buzzword, and it's what they're going to say. They're going to say it was Christian nationalists who did this. There are other attacks that will be done by Iranian sleeper cells and other terrorist groups inside the United States. And the United States government, though, is got a lot of people sympathetic to Hamas, a lot of Muslims in the government, and this alignment with what the devil wants done, and this just spiritual opposition inside themselves against the Jewish people, God's people, anything like that. So, and they also, out of fear of losing their jobs, being blamed for allowing Muslim terrorist cells to be operated in the United States, which they are. They've not only permitted it, they've paid to bring them in through the southern border. Their guilt, shame, fear, and not wanting to be blamed for that is going to make them twist it. So when there is a terrorist attack by Muslim terrorists, they will paint a false narrative. The CIA will step in and say, no, here's all this evidence. It was Christian nationalists did this. Christian nationalists did that. Because that's the enemy, right? They did just pass a law that is called an anti-Semitism law, but it technically outlaws the New Testament. I don't know if you saw that. And they're not saying that, of course, that, oh, it would never be applied that way. It would never be applied that way. Well, if you read the language, it can be applied that way. It's just a matter of willpower. And that law wasn't written in the past 2 weeks. It was sitting in somebody's desk, waiting. And then these protests happened, and they said, here's the law. Let's pass this. It was already ready. The persecution is rising. I'm sure you're seeing it. Nevertheless, you're going to say, well, I don't have to worry about that. I'm not a Christian nationalist. Well, I've seen liberal commentators on MSNBC already ask, so what is a Christian nationalist? How do you define that? And the answer was simply, a Christian who believes in the Bible. A Christian who, they don't have a greater definition than that. It's not a Christian who wants to conquer the government militarily and kill people. No, it's a Christian who believes the Bible is literally true. That's their definition of a Christian nationalist. So if you have terrible terrorist events happening in this country by Muslim terrorists, Iranian sleeper cells, maybe even suitcase nukes, and the government is like, we cannot admit we let Muslims do this. It was the Christian nationalists. We're blamed for those things. Probably in association with Trump. How much do you think society will hate Christians? Bible-believing Christians, because that'll be the definition. And that's when they'll start coming after Bibles, etc. Is after these things happen. More than one. It's going to take more than one. It's going to take some big ones. Especially after the lockdowns. But I just wanted to remind you, we have some smaller false flags coming. It's interesting kind of to look at an event and know and be able to kind of observe and say, well, was that a government one that they intentionally did and just changed who they blamed? Or was that Muslim terrorists and surprised the government, but they don't want to take blame, so they're blaming Christians for it? We'll get blamed for both, but you can kind of look at the event and know which is which. So if they don't have a patsy, like right off the bat, then it was probably a Muslim terrorist cell, okay, an Iranian terrorist cell that did it. Because those, when they don't have a patsy lined up, some Christian nationalists lined up, then that means that they weren't, they were caught off guard, didn't have time to prepare all of the background information on who they're going to blame. If you see a terrible event and in the end nobody's ever captured, they don't know who did it, that was probably an Iranian cell, sleeper cell. If they do, if they have, oh yeah, it was this guy, Christian nationalist, etc., then that's probably one of the 3 or more, for all we know, false flag events that have been planned, okay, by the intelligence agencies. I wish we weren't in this kind of a society, but we are. I think a lot more people's eyes are open now to the elites who run this world and how crooked and corrupt and evil they actually can be. Nevertheless, what do you take from this? Well, just be prepared. Be prepared and have your eye out for this. Watch the news critically. Don't believe everything you see. Don't believe the narratives that the media is putting out. It's almost always going to be a lie. Almost always. The truth filters out slower. But specifically, when you see the terrorist attack at the Toyota Center where the Houston Rockets play, know for sure that one is not what they're saying it is. We've already been told by God through that dream to know that. And I specifically think that one is probably a terrorist cell attack because of her description of the burnt bodies along with the shooting. Shooting and burnt bodies. This is reminiscent of what happened in Israel on October 7th. So for that reason, I think that is one done by sleeper cells, but I don't know when it's going to happen. Could happen as soon as this summer, could be this fall, could be next year, could be beyond that. But, sorry, it does, just because she says where the Houston Rockets play, doesn't mean that it would happen only during a Houston Rockets game, right? There are other events that happen at these stadiums. It could be a concert. It could be anything happening at that stadium. So at any time. So I would just stay away personally if I was you, but that is up to you. This is a warning. I'm just trying to be a watchman, reminding you of a theme that a lot of people may not be remembering. Anyways, you guys have a good day and enjoy the month of March. And not March, May. We're in May. Enjoy this month. We're not sure what's coming this summer. There may be some chaos this summer. Time will tell. Be in prayer for your country. Be in prayer for those around you, that their eyes will be opened. And to stay in the Word. Stay in prayer. Increase your faith. Increase obedience. Walk with Him well. And we'll see you guys soon.